High above the forest canopy, with the wind gently rustling the treetops, a small bird named Sky perched quietly on a high branch. Sky was a bright blue warbler, known for his sweet singing and playful fluttering around the tall trees of his home forest. But today, he wasn't singing. Today, something felt different. The air had grown colder, the sun didn't shine as warmly as it used to, and the once abundant insects had started to disappear. His favorite flowers, which once danced with color, were now withering, and the green leaves were turning shades of yellow, red, and brown. Sky had seen these changes before. The elders in the flock called it the season of leaving. Every year, when the signs appeared, the birds prepared for a long journey, a journey they called migration. It was not just a tradition, but a matter of survival. The forest, though beautiful, would soon become too cold, and food would be almost impossible to find. The only choice was to fly thousands of miles to a warmer place, far beyond the mountains and rivers, where the sun still smiled and the trees remained green. Though this wasn't Sky's first flight, it was his first migration. He had listened to the stories many times. Tales of strong winds, endless skies, giant oceans, and the distant lands where birds rested in warmth and peace. Sky had always dreamed of seeing those places, soaring through the sky alongside hundreds of others. But now that the moment was real, he couldn't help but feel nervous. His wings were strong, but were they strong enough to fly such a long way? What if he got lost? What if something went wrong? His parents, experienced travelers, noticed the worry in Sky's eyes. "You'll do just fine," his mother chirped gently, brushing her wing against his. "The sky may be wide, but you're not alone. We'll all fly together." His father added with a nod, "Just follow the stars, listen to your instincts, and stay close to the flock. The journey is tough, but it's also magical." That night, Sky looked up at the stars, wondering how they could guide him. The moon glowed softly, and the constellations twinkled like ancient maps in the sky. He felt a strange connection to them, as if they were calling him forward, lighting a path only birds could understand. As he tucked his head under his wing and drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of flying high above mountains, through clouds, and over sparkling lakes. The next morning came quickly. The air was crisp, and the sky was painted in soft pink and orange hues as the sun began to rise. All around, birds were gathering, chirping excitedly, stretching their wings, and lining up in the usual V-shaped formation. It was time. Sky's heart beat faster. He looked back one last time at the forest, the trees that had shaded him, the branch that had held his nest, and the stream that had sung to him at night. He felt a sudden ache in his chest. Saying goodbye wasn't easy. His best friend, a cheerful robin named Rusty, flew up beside him. "Ready?" Rusty asked with a grin. Sky forced a smile and nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." With a powerful flap of wings, the flock lifted into the air. Leaves swirled below as dozens of tiny bodies rose in unison, catching the wind like a wave of feathers. Sky followed closely, his wings flapping rhythmically as he climbed higher and higher. The forest began to shrink beneath him. Trees became small dots, rivers turned into silver lines, and the world grew bigger with every beat of his wings. As they flew together, Sky could feel the energy of the flock. There was strength in their unity, and that gave him courage. The wind rushed past him, cool and wild. He flapped harder, feeling his muscles stretch and strain, but also grow stronger with each motion. They flew past valleys, meadows, and hills, the sun warming their backs as they moved steadily toward the unknown. Sky began to realize that this journey was more than just moving from one place to another. It was a rite of passage, a test of courage and endurance. It was a lesson in trust, not only in himself, but in the flock, the wind, and the sky above. Though he had left behind the comfort of his home, he was discovering a new kind of strength, one that only comes when you spread your wings and take that first leap into the great unknown. The journey had truly begun. The morning mist still lingered in the air as Sky and the flock soared steadily over the forest. The trees below, once tall and towering in Sky's eyes, now looked like soft green patches stitched across the land. The wind brushed his feathers gently, and while the rhythm of flying had begun to settle into something familiar, his heart still carried a quiet weight. It wasn't just the distance they were flying, it was what they had left behind. For Sky, the forest had always been more than just trees and leaves. It was home. Every corner of it held a memory. The little puddle under the big oak where he took his first bath. The hollow branch where he and Rusty played hide and seek. The berry bush his mother always brought breakfast from. He could still hear the soft whistle of the wind through the pine needles and the gentle gurgle of the stream nearby. These weren't just sounds. They were part of him. As the flock flew in formation, Sky turned his head slightly to catch a last glimpse of the place that raised him. The morning light now touched the treetops in golden beams, and the entire forest glowed with a calm, sleepy beauty. He felt a lump in his chest. He had known this moment would come. The elders had spoken of it many times, how migration meant letting go for a while. But knowing and feeling were very different things. Beside him, Rusty flapped along steadily, occasionally chirping encouragement or cracking jokes to lighten the mood. "You know," Rusty said with a sideways glance, "I'm going to miss that old hollow log near the pond. Best echo spot in the whole forest." Sky managed a small smile, grateful for his friend's easy spirit. Further ahead, the older birds led the way, their wings cutting smoothly through the air with the confidence of many migrations past. Sky watched them carefully, trying to learn, but his thoughts kept drifting. What if the forest changed while they were gone? What if he couldn't find the same branch again? What if some of the birds who stayed behind didn't make it through the cold season? Just then, a soft call echoed from the back of the formation. It was one of the younger birds, a small finch named Lily. She had fallen behind slightly and was struggling to keep up. Sky slowed down for a moment to fly beside her. "It's hard to leave, isn't it?" Lily said, panting slightly as her wings worked double time. Sky nodded. "Yeah, it feels like we're leaving behind a part of ourselves. But, do you think we'll find something even better ahead?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Sky paused. That was something he hadn't fully thought about. They weren't just flying away, they were also flying towards something. Warmer air, fuller skies, new adventures. Maybe even new friends, new songs, and new places to explore. It didn't erase the sadness of leaving, but it gave it a purpose. A reason. He looked forward again, noticing how the clouds were slowly beginning to thin out, revealing a clear blue stretch of sky ahead. The sun was rising higher now, casting long shadows below them and lighting the path before them. There was comfort in knowing the others were with him, flying as one, each carrying their own memories, their own goodbyes. Suddenly, the flock dipped lower, gliding smoothly toward a wide river below. It was time to rest for a moment and drink. As they landed on a collection of rocks near the riverbank, Sky folded his wings and stretched his legs. The cool water flowed gently, mirroring the sky above. As he drank, he caught sight of his reflection. He looked older, just a little. Maybe it was the light, or maybe it was the miles already behind them. Rusty joined him and gave him a playful nudge. "We'll be back," he said quietly. "Spring always comes, remember. And the forest will be waiting." Sky looked up at the sky once more, then back at the distant line of trees they had left behind. He took a deep breath and let the ache settle in his chest. Not to get rid of it, but to carry it with him. It was a reminder of what mattered, what had shaped him, and what he would one day return to. With the thirst quenched and wings rested, the call to fly again echoed across the flock. One by one, birds lifted into the air. Sky glanced at Rusty, then pushed off the rock with strong wings, rising into the wind once more. As they climbed higher, the forest behind them slowly faded from view. Sky didn't look back this time. Not because he didn't care, but because he had said goodbye, and it was time to move forward. The sky opened wide above them, a giant, endless canvas of blue and white, dotted with drifting clouds that looked like soft pillows. Sky had never flown this high or this far before. The forest he once called home was now just a memory below the horizon. With every flap of his wings, the wind whispered in his ears, sometimes strong and playful, sometimes slow and steady. Around him, the flock moved like one great living shape, shifting and flowing in the air with perfect harmony. At first, the excitement of the journey kept his wings light and his heart full. Everything looked new from up here. Rivers curled like silver snakes across the land, and mountains stood tall like ancient guardians. Sky marveled at the way the earth stretched on, revealing colors and shapes he had never imagined. Fields of golden grass, glowing lakes, even villages with tiny human houses and roads like threads connecting them all. The world, it seemed, was so much bigger than he had ever dreamed. Flying with the flock was both comforting and fascinating. Every bird had a place in the formation. Sky flew just behind Rusty, who always managed to stay cheerful even when the wind blew hard. The older birds led in front, changing places when tired, keeping the group balanced. Sometimes, they'd glide for miles without flapping, riding the invisible wind streams with ease. Sky tried to mimic their movements, listening carefully, adjusting his wings, learning how to glide longer and save energy. There was a rhythm to the journey, a quiet music in the way their wings beat together and the wind hummed around them. But the journey wasn't all peaceful. There were moments when the sun burned too hot on their backs, and the air grew still and heavy. Sky felt the ache building in his wings, his muscles sore from hours of flight. His stomach rumbled with hunger, and he longed for the juicy berries back home. Yet, stopping wasn't an option. The flock had to keep moving, reaching their next resting spot before nightfall. Sometimes they'd pass over strange landscapes, giant cities buzzing with human noise, bright lights, and endless roads. Sky watched in wonder and a little fear as cars zoomed beneath them and buildings pierced the sky. The air felt thicker here, and strange smells filled the wind. But the flock kept steady, flying high above the confusion, holding close together. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in deep orange and purple, they flew over a giant lake. The water below sparkled with the reflection of the setting sun. Sky glanced down and saw his reflection in the water, his wings spread wide, gliding like a shadow on glass. For a moment, he forgot his tiredness. It felt like he was a part of the sky itself, free and strong. That night, they stopped on a wide plain filled with tall grass. The birds landed in small groups, resting their wings, grooming their feathers, and sharing soft chirps. Sky nestled close to Rusty, folding his wings and closing his eyes as the stars began to twinkle above. He thought about how far they had already come and how much more was still ahead. The journey was testing him, not just his body, but his heart. He missed home more than ever, yet he also felt something new, pride. He was doing something big, something that mattered. Migration wasn't just about flying. It was about growing, about facing the unknown and learning to trust the sky. As dawn arrived and the sky turned pink, the flock prepared to lift off again. Sky stretched his wings, sore but ready. He looked around at the birds beside him, some young like him, some older and wiser, all sharing the same purpose. They had become more than a group. They were a family in flight, each depending on the other. Answer, with another beat of his wings, Sky took to the air once more, his spirit lifted by the wind and the promise of the journey still to come. The sky, once soft and welcoming, had changed. Thick gray clouds gathered like giants above the flock, and the wind that used to gently carry them forward now pushed hard against their wings. Sky could feel it immediately. Each flap took more effort, and the air was colder, biting at his feathers. The older birds in the front called out commands, signaling the flock to tighten formation. Something was coming. Something big. Without warning, a loud clap of thunder echoed across the sky, making Sky's heart leap. The peaceful journey had turned into a test of survival. Raindrops began to fall. Light at first, then faster, heavier, until it felt like flying through a waterfall. The wind howled, tearing through the flock, making it harder to stay in line. Sky narrowed his eyes against the stinging rain and focused on Rusty's wings just ahead of him. Stay together, he told himself. Don't lose sight. The rain turned the sky into a blur. What once had been beautiful views of land and water below was now a misty gray void. Sky struggled to stay upright. Each gust of wind shoved him off course. He flapped harder, muscles burning, chest pounding. Birds around him shouted encouragement, and the formation wavered but held. But then a sudden gust of wind struck from the side, strong and sharp like a wall, and Sky was thrown sideways. He spun, tumbling through the air. Everything became a blur of feathers, rain, and sky. His heart raced as panic surged through him. He flapped wildly, trying to right himself, but the wind wouldn't let go. He caught a brief glimpse of the flock still flying in the distance, fading behind the curtain of rain. No, 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 don't lose them, he thought desperately. He shouted for help, but his voice was lost in the roar of the storm. Alone now, Sky fought the wind, leveling himself slowly. His wings trembled from the effort. He looked around. Nothing but clouds and rain. The comforting presence of the flock was gone. He had been separated. The one thing he feared most had happened. Fear crept into his chest like ice. What if he couldn't find them again? What if he flew the wrong way? What if he fell from the sky with no one to help? But then, somewhere inside him, a small voice spoke. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. You've come this far. You can't give up now. He remembered what his father had said. The sky may be wide, but you are not alone. Trust your instincts. Sky steadied his breath and tried to think. He scanned the sky, looking for any sign, movement, sound, even a trail. Then he noticed something. A gap in the clouds, a flicker of light. It was faint, but it was something. He angled his wings and turned toward it. As he flew, the rain began to ease just a little. The wind still pushed, but not as fiercely. His feathers were soaked, and his wings were sore, but he kept going. Minutes felt like hours. The sky opened slightly, and he finally spotted a shadow moving ahead, fast, rhythmic, familiar. A line of birds, cutting through the sky. His heart leaped. It was them. With all the strength he had left, Sky pushed forward, calling out through the wind. One of the birds turned. Rusty. His friend chirped loudly and fell back to meet him. Sky, you made it, he shouted over the storm. Relief poured through Sky's body. They flew side by side, rejoining the flock just as the rain began to fade. The storm slowly passed behind them, leaving a trail of wet feathers and quiet exhaustion. The birds were tired, but they were safe. Sky had never been more grateful for the sound of wings beside him. He looked around at his fellow travelers. Each one had fought the same wind, the same rain, the same fear. And together, they had made it through. As the sky brightened and the clouds began to drift apart, Sky realized something important. It wasn't just the wings that made a journey like this possible. It was courage. It was trust. It was the strength to keep going even when everything felt impossible. And now, he had that strength too. The days began to blend together as the flock moved across vast landscapes. The storm had left its mark, not only in their tired wings but in their minds. But even after the wind and rain, they pressed on, driven by instinct and the quiet pull of a place they had never seen but somehow already knew. The world beneath them continued to change. What once were forests became open plains, and then wide stretches of wetlands, dotted with shallow lakes and tall grasses that danced in the breeze. It was beautiful, but it also meant they were nearing the most dangerous part of the journey. The desert. Sky had heard the stories. Every young bird had. A stretch of land where the earth cracked from heat, where trees were rare and water even more so. The desert didn't care if you were strong or young. It tested everyone equally. Sky felt a nervous flutter in his chest as they approached the edge of it. The ground below shimmered, and the air rippled like a living thing. The sun glared down, sharp and unforgiving. Even the wind seemed to grow quiet, as if afraid to cross. The elders gathered the flock before they began the crossing. "We fly fast," one said firmly. "We don't stop. Not unless absolutely necessary. Stay close. Stay high. And most of all, don't panic." Sky nodded along with the others, his eyes wide. This wasn't just another day in the sky. This was the part that separated the dreamers from the doers. As they took flight over the edge of the desert, the change was immediate. The air grew hotter with each wing beat. The heat didn't just press on their feathers, it crawled under them, drawing out moisture and energy. Sky could feel it with every breath. Dry, thin air. No shade. No rest. Just the blazing sun and endless sand. Wings that once felt strong now burned with effort. The heat rose off the desert floor like invisible waves, making the horizon wobble and shift. Below, the land was lifeless. No trees, no rivers, no friendly animals. Just stones, dust, and the long shadow of the sun chasing them from behind. Sky's throat felt dry. His eyes stung. But he didn't say a word. None of the birds did. There was no room for complaints out here. Every beat of their wings had to count. He focused on Rusty ahead of him, who despite his usual energy, looked quieter now, his movements careful, conserving strength. Hours passed. The sun refused to move. It just hung there, watching. Sky began to feel dizzy, the heat pressing down like a heavy blanket. His thoughts turned sluggish. He remembered the forest, the cool breeze between the trees, the trickling stream, the shade of the big oak. That memory gave him just enough strength to push on. But then he heard a sudden cry from behind. A young bird, Lily, was dropping. Her wings flailed weakly as she struggled to keep altitude. Sky's heart skipped. Without thinking, he veered back toward her. "Come on, Lily," he called. "You can do this. Just a little more." "I can't," she gasped. "It's too hot. I can't breathe." "Yes, you can. Just focus on me. Flap when I flap. We'll do it together." Sky slowed his pace to match hers, flying alongside. His wings screamed in protest, but he didn't care. They couldn't lose anyone. Not now. Other birds noticed and shifted slightly, closing in to help create a pocket of wind resistance for her. The flock moved together like one body again, and slowly, Lily steadied herself. Then, like a miracle, a breeze picked up. It was faint, but cool enough to lift their feathers slightly. The sun, at long last, began to dip toward the horizon. And ahead, there it was. A cluster of trees. Real trees. And water. Sky almost couldn't believe his eyes. The oasis. Cheers rang through the flock as the birds picked up speed. One by one, they landed among the trees, dipping their beaks into the water, panting and chirping with relief. Sky landed beside Rusty, his legs trembling, his body soaked in sweat and sand. But they had made it. As he drank from the cool pool and felt the shade of the trees wrap around him like a long-lost friend, Sky knew this was more than just survival. This was proof. Proof that even the hardest parts of the journey could be crossed, not alone, but together. Morning light stretched gently across the sky, painting the clouds with gold as the flock rose once more. The desert was behind them, its dry heat just a memory now. In front of them lay the final stretch of the journey, a place they had only heard about through stories passed down from the older birds. It was the land of warmth and plenty, a land where food was rich, trees were full, and the skies were kind. Sky felt a strange mix of emotions stirring inside him: excitement, relief, and something else he couldn't quite name, like standing on the edge of a dream. The air smelled sweeter now, carrying scents of blossoms and fresh greenery. Below, the ground was changing again. Rivers curved gracefully through open valleys, and trees spread out like welcoming arms. The colors were brighter, the light softer. Sky flew a little higher, letting the wind lift him gently. It felt like the earth itself was celebrating their arrival. Beside him, Rusty chirped joyfully. "We're close, Sky. I can feel it." Sky smiled. "Me too." They were not the same birds who had left the forest weeks ago. Their feathers were rougher now, their wings stronger. Each one of them carried the marks of the journey, the storm, the long nights, the heat of the desert. But those marks were not signs of weakness. They were proof of growth, courage, and survival. As they flew lower, the lead birds began calling directions, circling gently toward a wide, green valley. It was everything the stories had promised. Trees heavy with fruit lined the rivers. Bright flowers swayed under the sun. Insects buzzed and darted above colorful fields. There was movement everywhere. Animals, birds, and the soft rustle of wind in the leaves. The flock began to descend. Sky could feel the shift in the group, wings slowing, glides becoming longer and smoother. It wasn't rushed anymore. It was calm, graceful, filled with the peace of knowing they had made it. Their landing was quiet but full of joy. Some birds dipped their wings in the clear water. Others picked at berries and seeds, chirping to each other in soft, happy tones. Sky landed beside a tall tree, taking in the beauty around him. He stretched his wings, still sore but full of pride. As he looked around, memories of the journey flooded back. The fear of the storm, the helpless moment when he was separated, the heat of the desert, the way Lily had almost fallen, and the way they had saved her. All of it had brought them here. A group of young birds gathered around Sky and Rusty, eyes wide with questions. What was the hardest part? One asked. Were you ever scared? Sky paused. Yes, he answered. There were times I didn't think I'd make it. Times I was alone, tired, and afraid. But we helped each other. That's how we got through. Rusty nodded. It's not just about flying fast or far. It's about flying together. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the valley in warm orange, the flock gathered in the branches of a great tree. They nestled in close, feathers touching, the way they had on every stop before. But this time felt different. They were no longer travelers. They were home. Sky sat quietly, watching the stars appear one by one. The sky had been their road, their test, and now their roof. He thought of his parents, of the forest he had left behind, of the way his wings had carried him through every challenge. He was no longer the uncertain young bird who had taken flight for the first time. He had become something more, braver, wiser, part of something greater than himself. The journey had changed him. He knew there would be another migration someday. Another flight. New birds to guide. New challenges to face. But tonight, in this place of rest and reward, all that mattered was the quiet joy of arrival, and the deep, comforting knowledge that they had made it together.